And I'm taking a class this semester called Church History 1. And I decided to take a class, and our offerings and stuff is paying for that, so that you can have some new material. Yeah, I already have, the pastoral ordination and stuff, but I want to continue to take different classes to work towards a Master's of Divinity degree. But while I take those classes, I want you as a church to learn with me as I learn church history. And this is very, very interesting. How did church history begin? That's the question that we asked this week. Did church history begin when Jesus was crucified? Or did church history begin when Jesus rose again from the dead? Is that what happened? And the professor this week gave a lecture that caused me to think about things that I hadn't thought like this before. And maybe you'll think about it too. Yes, Jesus died and rose from the dead, but something else happened. But let's start about people being raised from the dead. Had other people been raised from the dead besides Jesus? Yes, they had. And I'm going to keep the sound tech very busy tonight because I have all these scriptures. But in the Old Testament, in 1 Kings 17 to 24, as you'll see up on the screen, Elijah raised somebody from the dead. Now it came about after these things that the son of the woman, the mistress of the house, became sick. And his sickness was so severe that there was no breath left in him. So she said to Elijah, "What do I have to do with you, O man of God? You have come to me to bring my iniquity to remembrance and put my son to death." He said to her, "Give me your son." Then he took him from her bosom and carried him up to the upper room where he was living and laid him on his own bed. He called to the Lord and said, "O Lord my God, have you also brought calamity to the widow without whom I am staying, by causing her son to die?" Then he stretched himself upon the child 3 times and called to the Lord and said, "O Lord my God, I pray you, let this child's life return to him." Now, since he did this 3 times, for the next 2 times, I need you to say this with me. Let's say that verse together. "O Lord my God, have you also brought calamity to the widow with whom I am staying, by causing her son to die?" Can everybody see that up there? Let's say it again. "O Lord my God, have you also brought calamity to the widow with whom I am staying, by causing her son to die?" Then he stretched himself upon the child 3 times and called to the Lord. The Lord heard the voice of Elijah, and the life of the child returned to him, and he revived. Just think about that. We just said that 3 times. And that after that 3rd time, the child came back to life. The child came back from the dead. And so anybody who thought that Jesus was the first one risen from the dead, you need to realize that in the Old Testament, God gave Elijah power to raise somebody from the dead. And Elijah took the child and brought him down from the upper room into the house and gave him to his mother. And Elijah said, "See, your son is alive." Then the woman said to Elijah, "Now I know that you are a man of God, and that the word of the Lord is truth." Well, that's in the Old Testament. Did Jesus get risen from the dead after that? No, because then Jesus came and he started doing his ministry. Luke 7:11 to 17. Now, Elijah raised a widow's son, and look at Jesus coming over 1,000 years later, I believe. And look, he does the same thing. Soon afterwards, he went to a city called Nain, and his disciples were going along with him, accompanied by a large crowd. Now, as he approached the gate of the city, a dead man was being carried out, the only son of his mother, and she was a widow. And a sizable crowd from the city was with her. When the Lord saw her, he felt compassion for her and said to her, "Do not weep." And he came up and touched the coffin, and the bearers came to a halt. Now, and he said, young man, I say to you, arise. The dead man sat up and began to speak. And Jesus gave him back to his mother. Fear gripped them all. And they began glorifying God, saying, a prophet has arisen among us, and God has visited his people. This report concerning him went out all over Judea and in all the surrounding districts. And now, I want you to watch this in video, and it'll be just like real life. And yet, Jesus wasn't done yet. Because in John 11:38-44, Jesus, once more deeply moved, came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. This is somebody different now. Take away the stone, he said. But Lord, said Martha, the sister of the dead man, by this time there is a bad odor, for he has been there 4 days. Then Jesus said, did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? So they took away the stone. Then Jesus looked up and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they might believe that you sent me. When he had said this, Jesus called out in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out! The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. Jesus said to them, take off the grave clothes and let him go. And so Jesus rose from the dead. But before he rose from the dead, he made other people rise from the dead. And before he made other people rise from the dead, when he was still at the right hand of the Father, he gave power to Elijah to rise a widow's son from the dead. Resurrection happened before Jesus was resurrected, but then it happened with Jesus. And during this time when Jesus was walking the earth, this was this kind of feeling that if you were like a king or an emperor, to a god with a small g. And so the people, they made it not so personal like Jesus was personal, but they were like showing their national pride by worshiping the emperor and saying he's going to live forever, and he is, God is, speaking through him. He is God in flesh. And they're saying this about the emperors. And then Jesus comes along. And you're saying, that's weird. We don't do that today. But we kind of do. Think about it. The people that we know about in our country that have died or been murdered. How about this? November 22nd, 1963. President Kennedy. He was murdered. And people thought and felt like he and his wife had what they call like a fairy tale existence in the White House. But somebody shot him and killed him even while his wife was there with him. And she saw this tragedy happen. Even just months after they had lost a child whom they named Patrick. This child had died only a couple days after he was born. They had seen such tragedy, and yet the country idolized this president. But he died. And to help themselves come to grips with his death, the country came up with all types of conspiracy theories about what might have really happened. But the fact still remains that he's dead, will never come back again. And the nation mourned. And some people still, if you hear the story, it's still a sad story. Then you have Elvis Presley. He died in August 16th, 1977. But it was a running joke even as I was a child that Elvis is still alive, people would say. But they know that he was dead. And even 15 years ago, I walked in and got my taxes prepared somewhere, and in the waiting room, the whole room had Elvis stuff on it. And not growing up in the 50s, I couldn't understand. This man was a singer. Like, what is the obsession with this guy? But people idolized him. Even to the point where one time I helped make a cookbook, and somebody had this Elvis cake that they wanted to put in the church cookbook. And it said in the ingredients, it says, this must be done exactly, and highlighted and in bold, exactly as it is written. And they made this Elvis into an idol. And so we still do have idols these days. And we like to say, well, they'll live on forever. But they really don't. And so we put up pictures and stuff. And then there's North Korea. I remember, I don't know who the ruler was. He died now. I know there's a younger ruler now. But the one who died, I watched this video about all these people that were going blind in North Korea. And they had this simple procedure that these foreigners were allowed to come in and do on these people that were going blind. And when they took the stitches off their eyes, the first thing that the people did was they went up front. It kind of looked like a church. And they went up front and they had their bandages taken off right here. Everybody was sitting in the crowd. And they had their bandage taken off here. And right where the cross is, there was a picture of the leader whom they worshipped. And some people, one person, when he took off the bandages, he looked at the leader's picture. All the people who had done the eye surgery and had helped this man to see again were sitting there in the front row, looking at their work and so happy that he was seeing again. He never looked at them, never shook their hand. He looked at the picture on the wall, and he jumped up and down and said, "Thank you, O holy leader. Thank you, O great leader." And he gave that leader all kinds of things. That leader puts his own people in concentration camps. That leader died. And when that leader died, I watched this video and how the people were mourning, and they said, "Why did you have to go and leave us here?" That's what they said, as though their own lives weren't worth living because that leader had died. And And so there is still worship today of, quote, important people, and it always falls short. People are always oppressed. They're always disappointed. It's hard to handle fame. You even look at Michael Jackson, who died in June 25th, 2009. I read this very interesting book by a rabbi who was assigned to meet with Michael Jackson and to help him to become more godly and to develop more character. The very interesting thing about this is that Michael Jackson did not have a problem of people lining up and treating him like a god. He said, I'm just going to let them stay there. And he wouldn't stop them and tell them, hey, don't sleep in the hallways of my hotel. Go to bed. You know, I'm not worth that much. He wouldn't say anything like that. He said, well, if they want to love me that much, that's okay. And the rabbi was saying to him, go and humble yourself and don't think that you're this great. And let the people know that you're just a man. Well, he invited Michael Jackson to go to a synagogue in New York. And it was a singing synagogue. And it was also a synagogue where probably a lot of famous people had gone before. And when you would go to that synagogue, if you were Michael Jackson or just the man who came in off the street, they treated everybody like normal people. And he took Michael Jackson to this service. And Michael enjoyed the singing so much and the worship of God so much that he called up his mother after that experience and he said, Mom, he said, it's the best time that I ever had in my life. Now think about that. A man who people idolized, who when I was a kid, the rage was the Thriller and wearing the one white glove, and everybody wanted to do that dance that he did, the moonwalk and everything. And people idolized him. And yet he was confronted with some real good worship of the one true God. And he said, that's the best time I've had in my life. This worship of other people comes up short. And you know, this continues on. This isn't just something that happened in 2009. There's Kylie Ray Harris. She just probably killed herself. A young and upcoming country star caused her own wreck to kill herself and a 16-year-old. This fame, people can't handle it. And they end up destroying themselves. Prince, remember Prince? Died. Let's go crazy. Let's go nuts. Remember that song from the 80s? People with so much happiness and so much, good spirit in the music that he produced. And he died in an elevator. Defeated by drugs. Defeated by drugs. Such great talent within people, and they can't handle it on their own. Why? Because they're not God. None of those people could raise themselves back from the dead. But I told you at the beginning of the sermon, well, what really are we missing? What started this church history? Is it because Jesus rose again from the dead? And I submit to you, no. Because Jesus rose other people from the dead. Other people had been risen from the dead. What makes Jesus different? Well, Jesus not only came back to life, but he also ascended into heaven. Jessica, can you skip to the Apostles' Creed, please? There should be a tab that says the Apostles' Creed. You found it? Mm-hmm. Yes? Okay, I want everyone right now to read that out loud to me, and I'll stop you when I want to stop you. Starting now. 1, 2, 3. I believe
one God, Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth.
And Jesus Christ, his only begotten Son, our Lord, who was conceived by the Holy Ghost, born of the Virgin Mary, suffered under Pontius Pilate, was crucified, died, and buried. He descended to hell. The third day he rose again from the dead. He ascended to heaven.
Stop.
And sits.
Okay, go ahead. And sits where?
At the right hand of God, the Father Almighty.
finish that tonight, but he was crucified, dead and buried. He descended into hell. He rose again from the dead. And then what? He what? It starts with an A?
Ascended.
He ascended into heaven. Now everyone else that was brought back from the dead, the widow's son that Elijah raised, the widow's son that Jesus raised, Lazarus who Jesus raised, they were resurrected, right? But then they died again. They died again. But Jesus, let me tell you something else. Resurrection was witnessed by more than 500 in 1 Corinthians 15:1. Now, brothers and sisters, I'm reading this to you, 1 Corinthians 15:1. I want to remind you of the gospel I preached to you, which you received, and on which you have taken your stand. By this gospel you are saved, if you hold firmly to the word I preached to you. Otherwise you have believed in vain. For what I have received I pass on to you as of first importance, that Christ died for our sins according to the Scriptures, that he was buried, that he was raised on the third day according to the Scriptures, and that he appeared to Cephas and then to the 12. After that, he appeared to more than 500 of the brothers and sisters at the same time, most of whom are still living, though some have fallen asleep. Then he appeared to James, then to all the apostles, and last of all he appeared to me as to one abnormally born. You see, Jesus was verifiably, this is something that really happened in history. Jesus, in history now, was proven to have risen from the dead. More than 500 people saw him. But that wasn't the end. Because after he came back from the dead, listen to this. It says here, on one occasion while he was eating with them, this is after he came back from the dead, Jesus gave them this command. This is in Acts 1:4. Do not leave Jerusalem, but wait for the gift my Father promised, which you have heard me speak about. For John baptized with water, but in a few days you will be baptized with the Holy Spirit. Then they gathered around him and asked him, Lord, are you at this time going to restore the kingdom to Israel? He said to them, it is not for you to know the times or dates the Father has set by his own authority, but you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth. Now, everybody look at this next verse very carefully. After he said this, he was taken up before their very eyes, and a cloud hid him from their sight. So here's the difference. Jesus never died again. Because if you go to Luke 24:50, you will see here, all right, that it says here, when he led them out to the vicinity of Bethany, he lifted up his hands and blessed them. While he was blessing them, he left them and was taken up into heaven. Who was then? Jesus ascended before his apostles. People saw Jesus going up into the clouds. So, church history begins with what we can say and believe and note actually really happened. Not just is it written, it was witnessed that Jesus went up to heaven, and now the angels came. And they said this. They said, Men of Galilee, we're back in Acts 1, verse 11. Why do you stand here looking into the sky? Now, I don't know about you, but if I'm talking to somebody and they raise their hands and bless me, and then they start floating up like a helium balloon, and then a cloud covers them, I'm still going to keep looking for a while and see if I can get another shot. I mean, like, if that cloud clears away, can I at least see his foot? What last time? But the angels came and they said, What are you looking into the sky for? And they said, This same Jesus who has been taken from you This same Jesus who has been taken from you, what? Into heaven. Jesus was living. As he was being taken up, he was talking, he was breathing, fully alive, and taken up into heaven. Will come back in the same way you have seen him go into heaven. And so now you know where church history begins, is that Jesus wouldn't have been such a great craze if he had only been resurrected. Lazarus was resurrected, but we don't follow Lazarus. The widow's sons were resurrected, but we don't follow them because they died again. But Jesus died, rose himself from the grave, and then was taken back up into heaven. Nobody else ever did that. Now, if you go into Genesis 5, you'll see other people were taken away before they died. Like Genesis 5:24. Enoch walked faithfully with God, then he was no more because God took him away. Okay? So, but Enoch never died and then was brought back to life again. So you have people in the Bible. How about Elijah? Elijah was taken up in a chariot of fire. 2 Kings 2. As they were going along and talking, behold, there appeared a chariot of fire and horses of fire, which separated the two of them. That's Elijah and Elisha. And Elijah went up by a whirlwind to heaven. Elisha saw it and cried out, my Father, the chariots of Israel and its horsemen. And he saw Elijah no more. And so we have Elijah and we have Enoch, who did not die, but were taken right up to heaven. So let's review this again. Who is it that was born and then died, and then 3 days later rose from the dead, and then days later was taken up into heaven? Who did that? Only Jesus. Only Jesus did all of those things. And why? Well, I'll tell you why. Listen to what Jesus said before he died. Before he went through this ordeal, he said in John 6:38, "For I have come down from heaven." See, nobody else that was born in this human race ever came down from heaven. We were created in our wombs. God created Adam and Eve. Nobody came down from heaven. But Jesus said, I have come down from heaven not to do my will. Not to do my will. Remember, the idols that we talk about, Michael Jackson said, hey, it's okay if they kind of worship me, if that's what they want to do. Right? He didn't mind that. The dictator of North Korea, they demand that they be worshipped, that they be served. And Jesus came down from heaven and said, I have not come to do my will, but to do the will of him who sent me. Well, who sent him and what is his will? He answers that in the next verse. And this is the will of him who sent me, that I shall lose none of all those he has given me. You see, that's why tonight we had another person who's celebrating a year anniversary with their baptism. But I'm praying to God for the others who were baptized last year that they're going to be here. Jesus is calling them. He said, I shall lose none of all those he has given me. Some of you did not go to church for a long time. You have a testimony that says, I went to church as a kid, but then I stopped. But now you're here. Now you're here. And Jesus said a long time ago why you're here. He says, I shall lose none of all those he has given me. You might have been away for a while, but you're back. He's drawing you here. And now what did he say? But raise them up at the last day. You see, that's why Jesus ascended to heaven. This strong God, that he's going to raise us up again on the last day. For my Father's will is that everyone who looks to the Son and believes in him shall have eternal life. And I will raise them up at the last day. Jesus said it twice in 2 verses. Have you ever thought about the last day? The last day. Not your last day. But have you ever considered now that we have days now that God created the heavens and the earth on the first day? There was a first day and there will be a last day. That we won't always have time. Time will be no more. And when he says that this is the last day, for all I know, this could be the last day. That we will all be raised up. Some to eternal reward, and others to eternal damnation. But when Jesus spoke here, he was talking about the people that belong to him. That we sang this song, we belong to him. We belong to him right by his side. I want us to sing this song tonight called Shine on Us. And we can stop recording right now, but